I installed hidden cameras in my house and saw my husband doing things I never imagined. Before we start, tell me in the comments which city you're tuning in from. I'd love to know how far this story has traveled. Now, brace yourselves, because what you are about to hear may change the way you look at your family and whether the person sleeping next to you might also be plotting your downfall. Eleanor Thompson was 38 and theoretically had it all. Her own thriving marketing firm, a spacious house in Chelsea with garden-facing windows, and a family many would envy. She had been married for 12 years to Julian Vance, an outwardly charming and responsible man. Eleanor also looked after her younger sister, Lucy, whom life had not treated kindly. A diffuse autoimmune disease, according to the doctors, had left Lucy frail, weak, and emotionally unstable. She had been living with them for nearly 2 years. Eleanor worked from home most of the time, managing her digital marketing company from a small study next to the dining room. She handled meetings, contracts, campaigns, and budgets. She was good at what she did, and while her business kept her busy, she had never neglected her family. Lately, though, something felt off. The routine with Julian wasn't the same. He was arriving home later than usual, often without explanation. It wasn't just the hours, it was the way he avoided contact, how he'd pull away from her hand on the sofa, how his gaze seemed to search any point in the room but her eyes. And when she asked, he'd reply with the same calm tone he always used to diffuse tension. "Are you stressed, love? Have you been sleeping poorly? Would you like me to make you a cup of tea?" Lucy, on the other hand, seemed increasingly present. She moved from the bed to the sofa, from the sofa to the kitchen, always right where Julian also happened to be. And while her voice remained soft and her demeanor weak, there was something in her way of speaking that began to unsettle Eleanor. "Can I watch a film with Julian tonight?" Lucy asked one afternoon. "It helps distract me. I feel so lonely in my room." Eleanor smiled with effort. "Of course that's fine." That night, while reviewing reports in her study, she heard them laughing in the living room. Lucy's laugh was different. It wasn't a sisterly laugh, it was flirtatious, playful. And Julian? Julian was laughing too. Eleanor closed her laptop, sat in silence for a few seconds, staring at the wall. She wanted to believe it was all in her head, that she was being paranoid, that after so many years of marriage, it was normal for things to change. The next morning, something else happened. Opening the safe where she kept her personal documents, copies of contracts, deeds, her will, she noticed the code had been changed. Instinctively, she tried her usual code. It failed. She tried once more. Nothing. Her heart sped up. She took a deep breath and tried again. This time it opened, but what she found disturbed her. Some papers were out of place, and others were simply missing. A share transfer contract, a copy of the legal power of attorney she had signed with Julian 5 years ago. They were gone. "Was it you who opened this safe?" she asked Julian that evening, trying to sound casual. "What safe?" he replied without looking at her. "Oh no. Why? Are some documents missing?" "Yes. It wasn't me. What if it was Lucy? Perhaps she needed something." It was always Lucy. Eleanor went up to her sister's room. Lucy was resting in bed, a light blanket over her legs. She seemed asleep, but on hearing Eleanor enter, she slowly opened her eyes. "Did you open my safe?" Eleanor asked directly. What safe?" Lucy replied, frowning. "Do you think I get out of bed to go through your things?" "I didn't say that, I just asked. Are you accusing me of something?" "No, I just want to know if you saw anything strange." Lucy turned away toward the wall. "I'm ill, Eleanor. I don't even have the strength to shower without help, and you think I'm spying on your papers." Eleanor didn't reply. She closed the door carefully, walked downstairs, and instead of going to her room, she went to the study. She opened a folder on her computer. Home security empty. She hadn't updated the system in a while. That night she didn't sleep. She stayed up until 3 a.m. researching hidden cameras. She tried to tell herself she was overreacting, but something inside her, a persistent, low voice, wouldn't let her rest. And that voice finally won. 2 days later, while Julian and Lucy were at the clinic for a checkup, the technicians arrived. Eleanor pretended she was organizing a house move. She asked them to install small, discreet cameras at strategic points. The dining room, the living room, the kitchen, the main entrance, and yes, Lucy's room too. No one could know. Everything would be recorded directly to her laptop and a private cloud. When the technician left, Eleanor sat down in front of the screen. The house was empty and silent, but she felt something breathing behind the walls, something she couldn't see yet. At 6, Julian and Lucy returned. "You look better," Julian said, kissing her forehead. "Did you sleep a bit?" Lucy fancies pizza for dinner, is that all right? Perfect, she replied with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. During dinner, the three chatted like a normal family. Lucy laughed with a vitality she hadn't shown in weeks. Julian poured wine for both of them. Eleanor pretended. She pretended so well that she herself began to doubt her suspicions. Maybe she was overreacting, maybe the stress truly was affecting her. But that night, reviewing the day's recordings, she found something. A fragment. Just a few seconds. In Lucy's room. She was sitting on the bed. Julian was standing in front of her. The image wasn't sharp, but it was clear. He was stroking her face. Lucy was holding his hand with both of hers. There was no kiss, nothing explicit, but the atmosphere was different, intimate, too close for two people who, by all accounts, were brother and sister-in-law. Eleanor paused the video. Her chest pounded. She rewound, watched the scene again, enlarged the image. Julian was saying something, but there was no audio. The camera didn't have a microphone. Lucy laughed, then lay back down. Julian leaned over, touched her hair. Then the image darkened as he sat on the bed, just out of view. Eleanor snapped the laptop shut. She couldn't accuse anyone. There was no concrete proof, and yet her body knew. The next day, she booked an appointment with her therapist, Dr. Clara Bennett. "I don't know if I'm going mad, Clara," Eleanor said, her voice strained. "But my house doesn't feel like mine anymore. Something is very wrong, and I don't know if it's me or if they're actually trying to make me believe I am." Clara, a woman in her 50s with a serene expression, looked at her attentively. "Do you feel insecure?" "I feel watched, excluded, as if this isn't my place anymore. And Julian is distant but kind. He brings me tea. He asks how I am, but he looks at me as if he's waiting for me to fall, as if he's betting I'll break. And Lucy is like a shadow crawling through every corner. She says she's ill, but she has the exact energy to show up right when she shouldn't." The therapist observed her in silence. Then she said, "Eleanor, there's a term for this. It's called gaslighting. Making you believe you're losing your mind while they strip you of control over your life." Eleanor didn't respond. She felt the tears rising but held them back. "I'm going to find out the truth, Clara. I don't care what it is, but I need to know if the monster is in my head or in my house." That night, she waited for Julian to fall asleep. She pretended to close her laptop. She pretended to sleep too. At 3 a.m., when everything was silent, she turned the screen back on. She played the day's recordings. In one, Julian enters Lucy's room with a mug. She waits for him, sitting up. He gives her the mug, she drinks, they talk for a few seconds, they laugh. Then Julian takes something from his pocket, an envelope, and hands it to her. Lucy opens it and hides it under the mattress. They look at each other again. Silence. Eleanor breathes heavily. Her hands are cold. She doesn't understand what she's seeing. What was in that envelope? Why so many visits to her room? She fast-forwards to the living room recording, where she sees them conversing, believing they are alone. Julian says something. Lucy smiles. She sits too close. He doesn't move away. Then she takes his hand. He allows it. Not much more is seen. But this scene is enough to sow a doubt that won't leave. Eleanor turns off the screen, lies down, closes her eyes, and as silence envelopes her, only one question pounds in her mind. Are they in love? She has no proof yet, but what she has seen is enough to know that everything she believed was secure, might only be an illusion. And the worst part of all is that she is alone in that house with them, and she doesn't know how far they are willing to go. The tea and the lie. That phrase kept repeating in Eleanor's mind, like an echo dragging through the walls of a house that no longer felt like hers. Since installing the cameras, something inside her had shattered. She no longer looked at Julian with trust. She could no longer see her sister without feeling that something very dark was hiding behind that constant fragility. And every time Lucy coughed, every time she said she felt weak or asked for help up the stairs, Eleanor no longer knew if it was real or a meticulously rehearsed act. That morning, she woke up with an exhausted body. It wasn't usual tiredness, it was something denser, deeper. A persistent dizziness, a slight tremor in her hands, a feeling of disorientation. She placed a hand on her forehead. She felt warm. She thought of stress. She hadn't slept well for days. It wasn't strange that her body was starting to take its toll. Going down to the kitchen, she found Julian serving breakfast. Lucy was already sitting down, her head resting on her arm with a smile that looked like something out of a religious painting. Harmless, almost ethereal. "Good morning," Julian said. "Did you sleep better?" Eleanor nodded slightly. She approached the table and took her usual seat. In front of her was a cup of hot tea. Always the same blend, chamomile with honey, her favorite. Julian had been preparing it every morning for weeks. "Are you feeling all right, sis?" Lucy asked quietly. "You look pale." "I'm tired," Eleanor replied. "That's all." Lucy stretched to take her hand. "Don't you get sick too, please. I wouldn't know what to do if something happened to you." The phrase sounded sweet, almost moving, but it tied a knot in Eleanor's stomach. There was something about the way Lucy pronounced those words that gave her chills, as if she were speaking from a script. After breakfast, Eleanor pretended to go to her study. She closed the door, opened her laptop, and began reviewing the previous day's recordings. She fast-forwarded straight to the moment Julian prepared the tea. The kitchen camera showed him clearly. He boiled the water, opened a drawer, took out the tea bag, and then, without haste, took a small vial from his trouser pocket. He uncapped it, poured a pinch of something into the cup, and stirred carefully. Then he left it on the table, exactly where she found it. Eleanor felt her throat dry, her stomach churn. She stopped the video, rewound, and watched it again. It wasn't imagination, it wasn't paranoia. Julian was putting something in her tea. But what? And for how long? She decided not to drink it that morning. She poured the contents into a potted plant next to her desk. Then she opened Google and started searching for symptoms of mild substance poisoning. What she found didn't please her at all. Many coincided: nausea, weakness, confusion, irritability. Everything she had felt in the last few days. Mid-morning, she received a message from her friend Laura. She asked if they could meet for lunch. Eleanor accepted. She needed to talk to someone from outside, someone who didn't live under her roof. At the restaurant, Laura observed her in silence for a few seconds before saying a single word. "You don't look well, Ellie. Are you eating?" "Yes, or I try to," she replied, stirring her salad without touching it. "I think I'm getting sick." "What kind of sickness?" Eleanor looked down. "I don't know. I get dizzy. I find it hard to concentrate. I feel strange. And have you seen a doctor?" "Not yet." Laura rested her elbow on the table and stared at her. "Can I tell you something without you getting annoyed?" Eleanor nodded. "You trust those close to you too much. I don't know how to say it, but sometimes I feel you let things slide that you should question." "Are you referring to Julian?" "And who else would I be?" Laura retorted. "Marty, I've noticed him being distant with you for months. He's always with Lucy. And it's not that I want to speak ill of your sister, but is she really as ill as she says?" Eleanor swallowed. She didn't answer. Not yet. Returning home, she found Lucy lying on the sofa, covered with a blanket. The television was on. Julian wasn't there. "How are you?" Eleanor asked. Lucy turned to her with an exaggerated expression of tenderness. "I had a really bad headache today. I don't know if it's the medication or the change in the weather. Did you go to the doctor?" "I didn't want to bother you. I'm used to the pain, you know." Eleanor sat beside her with slow movements. She observed her sister's face. She no longer looked so weak. Her eyes weren't dull. Her skin had color, and yet she maintained the same discourse. "I'm sick. I can't. It hurts." "Lucy," she said suddenly. "What? Did you open my study this week?" Lucy opened her eyes in surprise. "Me? Of course not. Why would I?" "I don't know. I just saw someone went through my papers." "Are you saying it was me?" "No, I'm just asking." Lucy started to cry. "Do you really think I'd be capable of something bad?" Eleanor didn't know how to answer. The scene was a perfect repeat of many other times. Lucy crying, Lucy offended, Lucy making everything revolve around her. "It hurts that you think that, sister," she sobbed. "I love you. You're the only thing I have. Don't look at me like I'm your enemy." Eleanor wanted to hug her. Part of her still remembered the girl she used to look after when they were children, the one who asked her to read stories, the one who climbed into her bed when she had nightmares. But another part no longer trusted anything. That night, Julian returned with a pharmacy bag. He said it was something for Lucy's headache. "How is she?" he asked, leaving the bag on the table. "Better," Eleanor said. "And you tired?" He hugged her from behind. His gesture was tender, but mechanical, as if done out of obligation. Eleanor remained motionless. "I made you a cup of tea, love. It's in the kitchen." She nodded without saying anything. She waited for him to go up to Lucy's room. Then she went to the kitchen, poured the tea into a jar, and stored it in a marked container with the date. She had decided to have it analyzed. She spent the rest of the night reviewing the cameras. She discovered something new. In a recording from the previous day, Julian entered her study while she was in the garden. He searched the drawers, took out a folder, took a photo with his mobile, then put everything away and left. In another shot, Lucy was in front of her personal laptop, checking her emails. It was clearly Eleanor's device. The screen had the usual background. The cursor moved surely, without hesitation, as if she had already logged in many times before. Eleanor couldn't sleep. The next day, she went to the private clinic where Lucy had her checkups. She requested a copy of the medical history. She claimed to be a direct family member and needed the documents for a possible intervention. They handed her a sealed envelope at home. She opened it in her study. She reread every report. They all said the same thing. Patient diagnosed with diffuse-type autoimmune disease. Medication prescribed. Analgesics, vitamins, mild anxiolytics. None of the tests had official lab signatures. The prescriptions were signed by a single doctor. Same name, same handwriting. Eleanor searched for the name online. She only found an outdated website with vague information. No professional registrations, no reference in the National Medical Database. That night at dinner, Lucy barely touched her food. "I'm weak," she said in a dull voice. "I think I need a new treatment." "We can look for a second medical opinion," Eleanor suggested. Lucy and Julian exchanged a look. It was a second, almost imperceptible, but enough to confirm her suspicions. "You don't trust my doctor?" Lucy asked in a hurt tone. "I want to help you. That's all," Eleanor replied, controlling her tone. "Help me by doubting what I have." Eleanor took a deep breath. "Let's not talk about this now." Julian quickly changed the subject. He talked about the office, about how tough the market was. Then he looked at her. "Did you drink the tea? You seemed very down today." She faked a smile. Yes, it helped a lot. But she hadn't drunk anything. When she went up to her room, she left a hidden camera on the bedside table switched on. Then she got into bed and closed her eyes. She pretended to sleep. A few minutes passed. She felt the door softly open. The aroma of tea floated in, and then Julian's footsteps approached. She didn't move. She breathed slowly, as if in a deep sleep. She felt him place the cup on the table. She heard the faint click of the spoon, then silence. Then the door closing. She waited a few minutes. She sat up in bed, turned on the camera, and checked the recording. There was Julian in silence, pouring something into the cup, then smiling, a cold smile she had never seen on his face. Her heart was pounding so loudly she feared it could be heard in the hallway. She was certain. They were poisoning her, and the worst part was she didn't know since when. The plot and the kiss. Eleanor no longer slept as she used to. The darkness wormed its way into her thoughts and frayed her nerves. She slept in fits, always with one eye open, her body tense, as if an alarm might go off at any moment. The truth was, the alarm had already exploded in her head. Since confirming that Julian was tampering with her drink, something inside her had changed. She was no longer the woman who doubted herself. Now she was a strategist, a silent observer, another shadow within her own house. And while fear still stalked her, a strength she hadn't felt in a long time was also beginning to grow. That morning, before the full dawn, she got up silently, crossed the kitchen, took the container where she had stored the previous night's tea, and carefully placed it in a small portable cooler. She had called a private laboratory. She didn't leave names, only requested an urgent toxicological analysis. She would send it via courier service that same day. When she returned to the room, Julian was still asleep. He looked peaceful, as if his conscience weighed nothing. Eleanor watched him for a few seconds. He was lying on his left side with his mouth slightly open. She had known him for over a decade, and yet that face seemed like a stranger's. She wondered how many times he had looked at her, had kissed her, while plotting something behind her back. The morning unfolded with a deceptive calm. Julian left for work and Lucy, as always, stayed home. She said she felt weak. She said she had a headache. She said she needed to rest. Eleanor nodded in silence. She no longer argued, she just listened. Just after midday, she connected her external hard drive and began making copies of all the recordings. She couldn't trust the cloud system to be enough. She needed a physical backup. She carefully stored everything in a hidden compartment of the guest room wardrobe, behind a false wooden panel she had installed years ago with her father's help. No one knew about this compartment, not even Julian. Then she called her bank. Something wasn't right. For weeks, she had noticed irregular movements in her company account, but always assumed they were small accounting errors. Now she trusted no one. "I want to review the movements for the last 3 months," she told the bank executive. "All transfers without exception. Would you like us to send a digital report, or would you prefer to come to a branch?" "I prefer to come." She booked an appointment for the afternoon. She didn't mention it to Julian nor to Lucy. Before leaving, she passed the dining room. Lucy was on the sofa watching television, wrapped up to her neck. "Are you going out?" Lucy asked in a dull voice. "Yes, I have a meeting. Can I order something to eat? I don't have the strength to cook." "Do what you need to." Are you annoyed with me? Eleanor stopped. The question didn't surprise her. Lucy knew how to press emotional buttons with surgical precision. No, I'm just busy. Lucy nodded, but there was something strange on her face, a kind of half-smile that vanished as quickly as it appeared. At the bank, the executive handed her a folder with the movements. Eleanor reviewed them one by one. There were small transfers she hadn't authorized, £50, £100, £150. But what was alarming were three larger amounts. £5,000, £7,000, and £12,000 sent to an unknown destination account. The payee was a company called Integrative Vital Health. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Does that company have anything to do with my account? She asked. It appears as authorized by a banking power of attorney registered last month. A power of attorney? I haven't signed anything. The executive looked at her with discomfort. Here's the digital copy. Would you like to see it? The screen showed a document with her name, her signature, and an authorization for Integrative Vital Health to receive transfers from her business account for private medical services. Eleanor felt her stomach turn. Can I take a printed copy of this? Of course. On the way home, her mind was a battlefield. That company had to be connected to Lucy's doctor. It was the only logical explanation. And if that was true, Julian had managed that power of attorney behind her back. And even more seriously, he had probably forged her signature. When she arrived, she found Julian in the kitchen. He was on the phone, but he quickly hung up when he saw her enter. Hello, love. How was your meeting? Normal. Very long. I've had a long day. He approached to hug her, but she stepped back slightly. Julian noticed, although he didn't say anything. Do you want me to make you something? A cup of tea? Ah, no, thank you. Silence fell. Julian pretended to distract himself with the dishes. Eleanor watched him out of the corner of her eye. This man, washing a mug with total casualness, was the same one who night after night was trying to intoxicate her without leaving a trace. At dinner, Lucy barely tasted her food as usual. I spoke with the doctor, she said in a fragile voice. He suggested starting a new treatment. More aggressive but very costly. Eleanor swallowed. Costly? How much? Several thousand, but he said we could do it in phases. Julian intervened. I think it's worth it. We shouldn't skimp on health. Eleanor looked at both of them. Then in a calm tone she asked, and will that company, Integrative Vital Health, also be in charge of the treatment? Lucy blinked. How do you know about them? Just curious. Julian tried to smooth the atmosphere. There's no point in doubting everything, Ellie. We're doing this for Lucy's sake and for yours. You're stressed. You're not resting. You're at your limit. Eleanor looked him straight in the eye. And that justifies moving money without consulting me? Julian opened his mouth, but said nothing. Lucy burst into tears. I can't handle this tension anymore. It hurts me. I don't understand why you doubt so much. I just want to get well. Eleanor didn't reply. She got up from the table and went up to her room. In the early hours, her phone vibrated with a notification from the camera system. It was an automatic alert. Unusual activity detected in room 3. Room 3 was Lucy's. Eleanor sat up in bed, turned on her laptop, and opened the video. Her heart skipped a beat. The image was clear. Lucy was sitting on the bed, brushing her hair in front of the mirror. Her loose hair, perfectly shiny, showed no signs of weakness. She looked strong, energetic. She was smiling. Suddenly, the door opened, and Julian entered. He closed it behind him. He approached her without a word. Eleanor held her breath. Lucy looked at him. They smiled at each other. Then, without a doubt, Julian leaned in and kissed her. Long, slow, intimate, like someone unafraid of being seen. Eleanor remained motionless. Then she watched as he sat beside her, took her hand, and spoke into her ear. Lucy laughed, embraced him, and in that moment everything made sense. It wasn't just the money, it wasn't just the emotional manipulation, it wasn't just the intoxication, it was a complete betrayal. They were together. They had been for a while, and probably much longer than she suspected. Eleanor paused the video, downloaded it, copied it onto an external drive, and then lay down in bed. The white ceiling now looked like a tombstone. Her life, as she knew it, no longer existed. The question was no longer whether they were betraying her. The question now was, what else were they willing to do? The trap and the return. That question echoed in Eleanor's mind like a constant, relentless hammer blow. Since she had seen Julian and Lucy kissing with her own eyes, everything she had once believed to be real had crumbled. It wasn't just infidelity, it wasn't solely a betrayal between the sheets. It was something much deeper, more sinister. They were plotting her ruin, her disappearance, perhaps something more definitive. And she knew it, but she still didn't have the full truth. Eleanor could no longer afford to trust her intuition. She needed proof, facts, names, dates. Every minute spent in that house was like walking on thin ice, and behind the silence of every closed door, a secret was strongly beating. She could no longer afford the luxury of doubt. She had to act. She saved the video of the kiss on another backup drive, separate from the previous one, and handed it to Laura in a sealed bag with a note that read, "If anything happens to me, open this." She didn't explain further. Laura looked at her with a frown but asked no questions. She knew something serious was happening and that Eleanor needed time and space to face it. That same night, while Julian slept, Eleanor reviewed the cameras one more time. She wasn't just looking for compromising images. She was looking for a conversation, a stray word, a confession, something that would give her the missing pieces. And then she found it. It was 2 a.m. Lucy was in her room. Julian had entered stealthily, closing the door behind him. He sat beside her and handed her an envelope. She opened it and read it out loud. "Is the power of attorney ready?" "Yes," he said. "She'll sign it this week. She's so confused she won't even know what she's doing." Lucy chuckled quietly. "And when she signs it, what's next?" "Then the accident. We'll make her seem unstable. The doctor already has the report ready." Eleanor paused the video. Her chest pounded. She played it again. "Are you sure the report is credible?" "Of course. It's signed, sealed, everything. I put it in her medical file. If she tries to check anything, it'll look like she was always sick, lost, paranoid. And if she suspects? She won't, or if she does, it'll be too late." Lucy hugged him, kissed his neck. "You're brilliant. I'm just doing what needs to be done. We've waited long enough. The money, the company, the house, it will all be ours. And then we go to another country. New identities, new life." Eleanor felt her blood boil. The legal power of attorney, the false report, the escape plan. They were no longer suppositions, they were facts. They had said it, it was recorded, and the worst part of all was the coldness with which they spoke about it, as if it wasn't about a human life, as if she were just another obstacle to eliminate. The next morning, Eleanor booked an urgent appointment with Lucy's doctor. She feigned distress. She needed to know if that man truly existed, or if he was just another actor in this macabre play. He received her in a small consultation room on the other side of the city. The place was dark, with dim lights and a receptionist who barely looked up when Eleanor arrived. "Dr. Thompson," she said, introducing herself. "I'm here about Lucy Vance. I'm her sister." The doctor, a thin man with a scruffy beard and tired eyes, greeted her without emotion. "What brings you here?" "I just wanted to better understand my sister's diagnosis. I'm worried about her condition. Sometimes I have doubts, normal doubts, I suppose." The doctor settled into his chair. "Lucy suffers from a delicate condition. Her immune system is very unstable. It reacts poorly to certain stimuli. Stress affects her deeply. Do you have any concrete proof of that? Analysis, scans?" The doctor hesitated for a few seconds. "There are reports in her file. I didn't bring them with me, but they are registered. I'd like to see them. That would require signed authorization." Eleanor took her phone from her purse. She had been recording the conversation since she entered. "I understand, but could you at least tell me how long you've been treating her?" The doctor hesitated again. "About 6 months, maybe more." Eleanor looked at him coldly. "That's not true. You signed a report over a year ago. I have a copy. It's in my possession." The man blinked. "There must be a mistake. Or how much were you paid?" Silence. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Of course you do." She stood up, stopped the recording, and left without looking back. She knew she wouldn't get any more answers from that man, but she no longer needed them. The truth was complete. Back home, she locked herself in the study. She cried, but it wasn't a weak cry. It was a mixture of rage, powerlessness, and a betrayal so profound that she felt she didn't have room in her body for so much pain. She remembered the years of struggle. She remembered raising Lucy since they were children. She remembered working day and night to pay for her studies. How she was her support when everything fell apart. How, even knowing she had her life made, she opened her doors without hesitation when she fell ill. She remembered sleepless nights caring for her. She remembered hugging her when she trembled with fever. She remembered words that now sounded hollow. "I love you. You are my only family. I would never hurt you." Julian's voice overlapped in her mind. "I'm with you. No matter what happens. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." And as those phrases danced like knives, her mind returned to the video, to the conversation. To that instant when Julian said something that erased everything else. "The gas explosion will be quick. No one will suspect." Eleanor couldn't believe what she had heard. They were planning to kill her. Had they truly gone that far? The plan was perfect. She would sign the power of attorney under the effect of the substances. Then she would lose control. The medical report would leave her labeled as mentally unstable. And after that, the explosion, a domestic accident, all controlled, all clean. Julian would get everything, Lucy would get him, and no one would ask questions, no one would suspect. Eleanor was trembling, but not from fear. It was something else, an energy that drove her, a silent fury that was beginning to take shape. She couldn't sit idly by anymore. It was a countdown and time was running out. There were two paths: let herself be destroyed or act. And Eleanor had already made a decision. The counter-strategy. The rage that had grown inside Eleanor transformed into determination. She wasn't going to cry anymore. She wasn't going to let them destroy her in silence. She wouldn't run. She wouldn't beg. She would do something they would never expect. She would pretend. From that moment on, every word that came out of her mouth, every gesture, every look would be a strategy. She was going to play her own game, and she would play it better than them. If they wanted to see her fall, they would have to wait, because now every step she took would be designed to protect her life and drag them to the truth and to justice. She stood in front of the bathroom mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes swollen, her lips cracked. She leaned her hands on the sink and took a deep breath. The reflection looking back at her was no longer that of the broken woman she used to be. It was that of a woman who had been reborn in the midst of poison, lies, and contempt. "I'm not going to be their victim," she whispered through clenched teeth. "No, not this time. Never again." From that instant, the plan began. The first thing was to call an old, trusted friend, Eddie Scott, a corporate lawyer she had worked with years ago on a complex negotiation. She knew he was discreet, smart, and above all, that he would never betray her. "Eddie, I need to speak to you in person. It's urgent. And please don't call me back. I'll send you a location." They met in a discreet park far from her neighborhood. At noon, Eleanor arrived dressed simply, with dark glasses and her hair tied back. She didn't want to attract attention. Eddie greeted her warmly, but immediately noticed something was wrong. "You're very thin, Ellie. What's happening?" "I can't tell you everything now, but I need your help. I have to protect myself legally. I want to change my will, close financial access, create notarial documents that prevent another person from making decisions for me." "Are you under threat?" "Let's just say I have reasons to believe my life is in danger, and I can't go to the police yet." Eddie looked at her seriously. He nodded. "Tell me exactly what you need. We'll do whatever it takes. But promise me that if things get ugly, you'll let me know." "I promise you." Over the following days, under a facade of calm, Eleanor built her defense network. She changed the passwords to her bank accounts, revoked the power Julian had over her company, moved funds to an account no one knew about, and even registered a new will that excluded both of them completely. Meanwhile, at home, she pretended to still be the confused woman they believed they were destroying. She smiled, prepared their breakfast, made casual comments about her headaches and sleepless nights. And they, convinced that the plan was advancing smoothly, continued. But something began to worry them. Eleanor was no longer drinking the tea, and although she pretended to, she always found a way to dispose of it. She began to regain her color, to walk more upright, to speak with more firmness. Julian noticed it first. "You look better," he said one night. "Are you taking the vitamins I gave you?" "Yes, perhaps that's why. I'm also eating more fruit. You shouldn't push yourself so hard. You've been very agitated lately." "I'm trying to take care of myself, for you, for Lucy, for everyone." Julian smiled, but there was a strange tension in his gaze, as if he were beginning to doubt, as if something didn't quite fit. Lucy, on the other hand, showed clear signs of discomfort. Eleanor noticed how she watched her silently from the hallway, how she pretended to read while spying on her. And the most revealing was a conversation she managed to overhear one night in the kitchen when they thought everyone was asleep. "What if she suspects?" Lucy said quietly. "She doesn't. She's weak. She doesn't even remember basic things. We have her exactly where we want her," Julian replied. "Sometimes I feel like she's pretending. She's not. You don't know her like I do. If she realizes everything, she won't. And if she does, it'll be too late." Eleanor backed away silently, went up to her room. That conversation was the last thing she needed to confirm that the plan was still in motion, and now more than ever, she had to act first. 2 nights later, Julian discovered that something was wrong. He was checking the accounts from his laptop in the kitchen, believing he was alone. He didn't know Eleanor had installed a camera above the dining room lamp. She was watching in real time from her mobile. "Where's the money?" Julian asked the heir. He moved the mouse quickly, opened folders, closed tabs, rubbing his forehead in frustration. What is this woman doing? Eleanor smiled. She knew that would happen. She had started moving part of her company capital to a shielded fund under Eddie's advice. They couldn't touch anything anymore, and they knew it. That same night, Lucy entered her room with a cup. I brought you your tea. I thought you might want to rest. Thank you, Eleanor replied, taking the cup, but she didn't drink. Lucy kept looking at her. Is everything all right? Yes. Why? I don't know. You're different. I'm just trying to feel better. Do you really trust Julian? She asked suddenly, as if searching for something. Eleanor looked up, disconcerted. Why do you ask? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if he doesn't have too much influence over you. Eleanor tilted her head. Lucy seemed nervous. Are you saying I should distrust him? Lucy hesitated. I just want to protect you. At what cost? Lucy didn't answer. She got up and left. Eleanor took a deep breath. Something was changing. They were losing control, and that made them unpredictable. 2 days later, Eddie called her from an unknown number. Everything is ready. The accounts, the will, the notarial documents. They can't legally touch you anymore, but I need to see you. Eleanor agreed. They met in a discreet coffee shop. Eddie carried a folder with copies of everything. We did it just in time, he said. I just received a notification. Someone tried to access your company account with a fake authorization. Was it Julian? I don't know, but the attempt failed. Thank you, Eddie. Listen to me. Don't trust anyone, and if you can, disappear for a few days. Let them think they won. Confuse them. Eleanor nodded in silence. That night, she returned home as if nothing had happened. She had dinner with them, chatted, smiled, and when everyone was asleep, she wrote a letter. A single sheet with clear words. At 4 a.m., she put on a jacket, took a small backpack, and left through the back door. She left no trace, no active cameras, no lights on, nothing. The house woke up in silence. Julian was the first to notice. Eleanor wasn't in bed, not in the kitchen, not in the study, nor in the garden. Lucy came downstairs with a distraught face. She's gone, Julian asked. I don't believe it, said Julian, but his voice no longer held the same certainty. The unraveling. Julian felt the emptiness from the first moment the house woke up without Eleanor. She wasn't in bed, not in the kitchen, not in the garden. There were no traces, no signs. Lucy looked at him with wide eyes, a white face, and icy hands. The cameras that supposedly controlled Eleanor's every move were black, as if someone had disconnected them at the root. She left. Lucy asked without blinking. I don't believe it, Julian said, but his voice no longer held the same certainty as before. Both searched the house room by room. Julian tried to access Eleanor's laptop, but it was locked. The bank account inaccessible. The safe empty. The envelope that should have contained the signed power of attorney gone. Inside, Julian knew Eleanor had gained an advantage, but he didn't tell Lucy. She was already showing signs of losing control. Her hands were trembling. She struggled to hold her gaze. She had stopped feigning weakness, and now only naked panic remained. She's tricking us, Lucy said. She wasn't sick. She's been watching us. She knows everything. Calm down, Julian ordered. We still don't know what happened. She might have left confused. She might have had an episode. She might be lost. Should we go to the police? And with what proof? What if she recorded something? Julian didn't answer. 3 days later, the story began to appear on local news channels. Woman disappears without a trace. Suspicions point to a nervous breakdown. Eleanor's image filled the screen. A photograph Lucy had carefully selected and given to the press, where she appeared with a dull look, as if she were already broken beforehand. Julian gave his first interview 2 days later. He appeared in front of the cameras with a serious face, accompanied by Lucy, dressed in gray, with loose hair and a mournful expression. Eleanor had been struggling with severe anxiety episodes for some time, he said in a grave voice. We didn't know how to help her. She hadn't slept for days, was emotionally withdrawn, and had confused ideas. The journalist, Ms. Claudia Hayes, took note of every word. Did she have a medical diagnosis? She asked. Yes, she was treated by a specialist. We have the reports. Lucy intervened tearfully. I saw her crumble. She was absent. She said things that made no sense. She was scared. She felt persecuted. Julian squeezed her hand, giving strength to the act, but Claudia noticed something strange. There was no real pain in their eyes, only a learned script, as if every word had been rehearsed dozens of times. The story went viral in less than 48 hours. On social media, Eleanor's image circulated alongside the headline, Missing Businesswoman. Family fears the worst. But not everyone bought the story. Isn't it strange that her husband and sister were living with her? Someone commented online. And those two are giving interviews? I don't know, something smells fishy. They look too calm, wrote another person. I've seen husbands more distraught when their cat goes missing. This guy talks as if he's promoting a brand. And they weren't wrong. From an unknown location, Eleanor watched everything. The interviews, the news, the posts. She was in a small town 2 hours outside London, in a cottage belonging to a distant relative who owed her a big favor. No one knew she was there, only Eddie and Laura. She spent the nights watching and recording every public appearance of Julian. She took notes, saved fragments, and analyzed every word. She had everything perfectly planned. Eddie had helped her gather all the evidence into a digital file with a physical copy, protected by a password. They had prepared a legal strategy, but most importantly, they knew the only way to expose them wasn't in a courtroom. It was in front of the world. Meanwhile, Claudia Hayes decided to visit the Vance house. Something didn't sit right with her. She requested a more intimate interview. Julian accepted with a forced smile. We're open to talking. We want to find her. That's all that matters. The journalist toured the house, accompanied by them. Lucy was vulnerable. She touched the armchairs, pointed out the spot where Eleanor used to sit. She liked to read here. She spent hours. She was very solitary, actually. Claudia walked in silence. She observed. She felt something she couldn't explain. Upon reaching Eleanor's study, something caught her attention. A different lamp, more modern, newer than the rest of the furniture. Can I take a picture of this room? Of course, Julian replied. It's where she worked. Her sanctuary, let's say. Claudia took several photos, but what interested her most was that lamp and the mirror. A large, antique mirror placed opposite the desk, too clean, too well positioned. That night, she reviewed the images in her studio. She zoomed in on the lamp. There was a slot that didn't correspond to any lighting design. It was a camera. She dialed the number of a contact in tech security. I need you to come with me to a house tomorrow. I think there are hidden cameras. I want to know if they recorded and what. The next morning, she returned to Julian's house with the excuse of filming shots of the home for the report. While Lucy prepared coffee in the kitchen and Julian spoke with the cameraman, the technician Claudia had brought discreetly checked the lamp and the mirror. It took him less than 5 minutes to find the system. Yes, they were connected to a local network, but they're not recording anymore. Someone disconnected the server, although this one had internal memory. Claudia looked at him. Can you recover anything? Give me an hour. Meanwhile, the journalist interviewed Lucy again. This time she was more direct. And Lucy, what was the last conversation you had with Eleanor? Lucy hesitated. I think she told me she was confused, that she felt lonely, that she couldn't trust anyone. And she never mentioned suspecting anyone? No, never. She always told me she loved me, that I was her refuge. Claudia smiled without replying. She was clear. She was lying. An hour later, the technician appeared in the garden. Claudia, I have it. What? The recordings. The last 72 hours before they were disconnected. They're here. Claudia took the device with both hands. What's on them? I don't know if you should see it here, but what I heard doesn't match what they've been telling you. Claudia put the device away, said goodbye to Julian and Lucy, and left without another word. That night, she reviewed the videos in private. What she found left her immobile. Julian and Lucy kissing. Julian pouring something into Eleanor's cup. Conversations where they spoke of the accident, where they mentioned false medical reports, where they talked about the money, the power of attorney, about when this is all over. It was a case of structured betrayal, a meticulous manipulation. Claudia couldn't believe what she had discovered. In the early hours, she made an anonymous call to the police. Check the security camera behind the mirror. You'll find everything. She hung up, and at that moment, Eleanor received the message she had been waiting for. Everything is in motion. Prepare yourself. You are going to return. The press conference. Eleanor read that message and felt a different kind of chill. It wasn't fear, it was certainty. What had begun in secret amidst contained tears and sleepless nights was now about to be revealed to all. The world they had built on her back was about to collapse, and she would be present to watch it crumble. Eddie had already confirmed it. The police had the recordings, the documents, the bank records, and the confession of the repentant doctor. Claudia Hayes, the journalist who exposed everything, had prepared a press conference at a central London hotel. National media outlets were confirmed. Eleanor's face was no longer that of a missing person, but of a woman who, without saying a single word, had shaken the foundations of her family and the system. Eleanor got up early that day. She dressed in a simple, neutral suit she hadn't worn in years. She had chosen it with intention, discreet, elegant, unpretentious. She wanted to show herself as she was, real, tired but firm, broken but still standing. Laura accompanied her to the hotel. In the car, Eleanor looked out the window as the city woke up. People walked by, unaware that in a matter of hours, they would be talking about her again, but this time not as a victim, but as a witness, as a survivor. The hotel ballroom was full. Microphones, cameras, low voices, expectation. In the background, Julian and Lucy, invited by the defense, didn't know Eleanor would appear. They believed the press conference would be an official announcement from the police, a formality, another excuse to continue manipulating the narrative. They didn't expect to see her, much less alive. When she entered, everyone stood up. The silence was immediate. Claudia accompanied her to the podium. Eleanor didn't need anyone to speak for her. She walked to the microphone with a sure step. Her breathing was controlled. Her gaze was fixed. My name is Eleanor Thompson, and for the last few months, I have been the victim of an attempt at emotional, legal, and physical destruction by the two people who were supposed to protect me. My husband, Julian Vance, and my sister, Lucy Vance. In the back, Julian froze. Lucy lowered her gaze as if her entire body were collapsing in that instant. They made me believe I was ill. They isolated me, manipulated my environment, altered documents, poisoned my food, and planned what they called an accident. The room erupted in murmurs. The flashes didn't stop. Claudia stood silently beside her, with a serious face. Eleanor raised a device. These recordings, taken from the hidden cameras I installed in my own home, clearly show the truth. They show how my husband and sister maintained an intimate relationship, how they forged medical reports to declare that I had mental disorders, how they plotted to gain control of my assets, and how they planned my death as a clean escape. A screen projected part of the videos. The words were heard clearly. The conversation about the accident, the manipulation, the laughter. No one in that room could deny what they were seeing. It was too evident, too brutal. The police, who were already coordinated with Eddie and Claudia, didn't wait any longer. They entered the room silently. They approached Julian and Lucy. The officer addressed both of them firmly. Julian Vance, Lucy Vance, you are under arrest on charges of attempted murder, fraud, forgery of documents, and criminal conspiracy. Lucy began to scream. She cried, pleaded, knelt on the floor, covering her face. No, it's not true. It's a lie. Eleanor is mad. Eleanor didn't look at her. Julian, on the other hand, said nothing. He only kept his eyes fixed on her until finally, his face contorted with rage, he spat out, "You were never as clever as you think." Eleanor held his gaze. "And you were never who I thought, and I am no longer who you broke." He looked away as the officers handcuffed him. No one in the room breathed. Everything was said, everything was exposed. There was no turning back. In the following days, the headlines changed. Eleanor Thompson breaks silence, the blood betrayal, chronicle of a death that wasn't. The story crossed continents. Social media was flooded with messages of support from women and men who told their own stories of manipulation, abuse, and family betrayal. Lucy was admitted to a psychiatric hospital after her collapse during the arrest. Doctors determined that her emotional imbalance was severe. Eleanor did not demand her conviction. She only requested that she never come near her again. Julian faced formal charges. During the trial, the evidence was irrefutable. The court unanimously found him guilty. His sentence would be long. The money, the house, the company, everything legally returned to Eleanor's hands. Claudia Hayes published a book based on the case. She titled it The Invisible Sister, not as an homage to Lucy's victimization, but to that figure who so often goes unnoticed. The woman who gives everything, who holds everything together, and who often disappears in the midst of chaos until she decides to return. Eleanor rejected television contracts. She didn't want to sign with any production company. She wasn't interested in fame or becoming a symbol. She only wanted to reclaim her life and understand it. The sea seemed like the only place capable of embracing her story without judging it. That's why, weeks after the trial concluded, she walked alone on the beach at dawn. The cold breeze, the soft sand, the sound of the waves. She stopped in front of the sea, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. She had survived, and although she was left with scars, she also carried a strength she never knew she possessed. A soft voice sounded within her, as if floating out of her soul amidst the mist. Sometimes life breaks you to show you what you're made of. I learned that love is not begged for, that blood does not guarantee loyalty, and that the truth, however much it hurts, always sets you free. Eleanor smiled, her eyes full of tears, but they no longer hurt. Now they were something else. Freedom. The sun began to rise over the horizon, and within herself she said, "Don't ignore your intuition. Sometimes it's the only thing you have to survive." What did you think of this story? There are many people who, like Eleanor, are fighting silent battles every day. Our hope is that her voice has also resonated within you. If this story touched your heart, share it. Let more people feel supported. Be part of the change. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in her place. What city are you watching us from? Reading you makes us feel closer to you. And if you haven't already, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Every gesture you make is a sign that these stories must continue to be told. Don't go yet. Our next compelling story is already appearing on your screen. Click on any of them and continue exploring this universe of real, moving, and necessary tales. Thank you for being here. Thank you for feeling with us. We send you a big hug wherever you are.